Welcome to another episode of the Dads Making a Difference podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of having a conversation with Curtis Butler. This is one of my favorite conversations that I've had on this podcast. Yes, Curtis is an impressive professional. Curtis has spent 30 years in finance as an investor and client-facing executive at huge firms like JP Morgan, Jennison Associates, and so on. But that's not why I brought him on, because when I met Curtis, I realized that Curtis's personal life as a dad, as a husband, deeply impacted his work. And it forced him to make a shift in his life, a shift where he now guides and mentors youth, 20 somethings, in the path in which they take in their life, especially when they're coming out of university, they're looking for employment and careers. And it's amazing in this conversation how you get to hear from Curtis, how what he learned raising daughters, one daughter who had complexities in her life that he will share in this conversation, and how what he learned as a dad has impacted not only his work, but also his coaching practice. And what you and I are both going to get out of this conversation are ways in which we can create safe spaces in our home, safe spaces for conversation with our kids, how we can model trust and compassion, how we can look to teach and mentor others and ask the right questions, all things that as a dad who wants to make a difference, we want to get stronger in, because truthfully, we are looked to set the temperature in our home. We will talk about that in this episode. I'm excited for you to hear this conversation. I wrote so many notes during this. I hope you have time to write notes. It's a good conversation. You will come back to it. This conversation with Curtis Butler on the Dads Making a Difference podcast starts right now. Curtis, welcome to the Dads Making a Difference podcast. It's great to see you today. Thanks for joining me for this conversation.
No, thank you, Ken. This is great.
We were just chatting really quickly before, both of us. I love your background. And we were talking about how the busyness in the background, it immediately made me a little self-conscious about my background. But
yours is perfect. You're centered beautifully.
Yeah, but it looks beautiful. Man, I'm excited to dive into our conversation because you have a unique background and a depth of experience, both professionally in your work, but also in your personal life and as a dad and as a husband. And I'm interested to learn more about you, the work that you do, and how those two things in your journey intersect and have influenced each other. And so I'm so excited for this. So Curtis, for the guys who are listening, why don't you take a few moments and just tell us a little bit about you?
Sure thing. And it's actually one of the things I teach my coaching students is how to do a really effective job of telling their own personal story, their personal narrative. So thank you very much for that question. I grew up one of 5 kids upstate New York in the US. And on weekends, I would dig ditches and plant trees. And mom was a nurse and dad was a lawyer. And so I grew up with, those kinds of values in our household. And I learned how to be a member of a team as one of 5 kids, and I wasn't the center of the universe. And that has really helped me so much throughout my life. I was a Boy Scout, right? So that says a lot about me, an Eagle Scout. Really, learned from my parents, integrity and honesty and giving back, leadership, all the same kind of values that led me to where I am today professionally. But pursued a career in finance and spent more than 30 years in that career. And all along, I have an incredible passion for teaching and mentoring. So in any job that I had, I would always help my younger colleagues with their careers or just personal advice. And just this year, I made the big step of leaving finance formally. Yeah. And starting my own company, Guided Ascent Career Coaching, which is focused exclusively on young people. So largely college students, recent graduates, young professionals. I'm really looking for the opportunity to launch a proper career. And as I'm sure you've read, it's exceptionally challenging right now. And recent graduates are finding a really hard time getting into a career that is meaningful for them.
Yeah. You have a statistic on your website where it says almost 50% of college graduates end up in a job that doesn't require a college degree. And so you're
That's
trying
right.
to help them not end up there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy it. I enjoy the interaction. And what I love about the young people is they're so open to the advice, and they really do follow the suggestions of a veteran
Mm.
who's interviewed hundreds of people, been in that room hundreds of times. And it's really exciting to see their success. My favorite text is, Curtis, I got the job. I
Yeah.
just love that text.
Yeah. That's excellent. And I love that because I find the same with youth, and I've worked with youth for a long time, but more about like that 18, 19-year-old range. And they're so eager to learn and seek mentorship. I've seen that more in young adults right now than I probably have seen in the past. And I don't want to date us, but in my brain, I don't feel like I'm that old, but I'm almost
And
30
you don't
years.
look it either,
Yeah.
Ken.
And I'm almost 30 years older than those kids. And
Right.
so when I feel very honored that they would ask me. But another thing that we were saying just before is you were telling me about someone who's working with you right now who's 30 years younger and the perspective that you've gained from them. And so in your work, you're mentoring youth, but I'm sure that you're learning a lot about like their current world and current context right now as well.
That's exactly right. And I was always the guy at the party, still am. I always gravitated towards the oldest person in the room because
Mm.
they had so much to teach me. And they're my cohorts, my friends are apologizing all the time. Oh my, I'm so sorry my dad cornered you. Like, far from it. I love talking to those people because they've been through so much and they can teach us.
Yeah.
I feel the same way now about 20 somethings. They
Mm.
are seeing the world so differently from the way you and I did when we were that age, because they literally were born into a world that had the internet and mobile phones,
Yeah.
and we were not.
Yeah. We were not. No, I
So
still
it's pretty
remember that
wonderful.
first life.
I have that every single day.
Yeah.
I have teenagers at home,
Yeah.
but I have it every single day through my work too. So I really do enjoy that.
That's amazing. And you have teenagers at home. And I want to dive into this a little bit because, yes, we're going to talk about your work. We're going to give people more information on that, but it's dads making a difference. And
That's right.
when we did our pre-call, one of the things that I was so happy that you shared was your experience as a dad. And I think often people will come on and they have a program or a book or something like that, and you're working on those things, but that's not in a silo separate from your family. There's things that in your family over the years have impacted your work and impacted the way you interact with others. And you spoke about your teenagers, and you have a daughter who is she still almost 19 or is she 19 now?
That's right. She's almost 19.
Almost 19, but has navigated some complexity in her own life. And I would love for you to share a little bit about that. And it would just open a conversation about as a dad, some things that
Yeah,
you're
sure.
proud of and worked on. Yeah.
And I'm very open about what our family has been through and how I've changed.
Mm.
I think I may have mentioned I'm halfway through a book. I've kind of backburnered it with this new business, but a book about the journey since Charlotte was born almost 19 years ago. And Charlotte was born with, she started having seizures on the second day of life. We
Mm.
found out not too long after she had some serious disabilities, specifically cerebral palsy, which makes her, she's in a wheelchair. She doesn't speak, but she's beautiful and she's alive and she's funny. And she and I communicate at a completely different level. And she's really just one of the lights of my life. But the essence of the book is, and this is a real message for dads, particularly dads who may have had some sort of struggle in their life with their children, is it starts out, why me?
Mm.
And then very quickly after that, at least in my experience, and a lot of people struggle with this, but I was lucky that I talked to the right kind of people and I had a lot of influences in my life who were trying to have me look to a positive future. So why me turned into why not me?
Mm.
And then why not me became, and where it's been probably for the past 15 years, I'm glad it's me,
Yeah.
because I am the human being and the father and the coach and the mentor and the husband that I could have been but might not have been were it not for Charlotte and Claire. So Charlotte's almost 19 with incredible challenges. Luckily, she's pretty stable. The first few years of life were pretty tough. And all we did was pray for a second child who was healthy, strong, and independent.
Mm.
And we may have prayed a little too hard because Claire is wow. She's brilliant and gorgeous and funny and talented. And she could argue before the Supreme Court today.
Yeah.
And she's only 15.
That
So
must
we
be
got,
interesting.
so we got this incredible combination, right? Different challenges, right? Wonderful challenges. And I've, over the years, really, and this is a message for all dads.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those things that I think we can all continue to learn. The reason I was able to transition from why me to why not me to I'm glad it's me was I stopped seeing what Charlotte wasn't.
Mm.
And I only saw what she is.
That's powerful.
And that is true to this date. Even when we struggle, we have a challenging week this week health-wise. And it's just, I try to see the best in both of my girls all the time. I don't succeed all the time, but it's really been a major part of my growth and my journey for the past almost 19 years.
It's incredible. That's powerful stuff. So seeing what she wasn't and to see what she is. And I want to stay on the topic of your family, but I do want to point out that I can't help but feel that in itself of what you've learned from your experiences as a dad and stop seeing what someone wasn't and what they are has helped you in your mentoring for 20 somethings as they're trying to navigate who they are and who they're not. And so I do want to stay on the topic of your family, but I can see the parallels and how your strengths and some of the things that you developed as a dad probably have influenced your work.
And yes, I appreciate you saying that because I do find that is something that differentiates my coaching. And I talk to parents about this. I often end up talking to parents before they sign on because the parents of a 19-year-old are thinking, who's this person I'm signing my kid up with?
Yeah.
So they like to have a conversation sometimes. And I tell them, I'm invested in the success of your child. And I'm not offering generic advice.
Yeah.
The first hour is just getting to know your child. And so the path that we set is completely driven by who they are in that moment. I meet them where they are. And I don't have unrealistic expectations or generic expectations. It's let's get you where you want to go, not where I would want you to go or I would want to go. It's where you want to go. Let's get you there.
Amazing.
And that's very much driven by the past 19 years.
Yeah. I want to point something out that some of the guys listening might not understand, and I think it's in the background of your story, is that for 30 years, you worked as a client-facing executive, and Charlotte's almost 19, so which means for at least, 11 of those years, and then you go 19, 18 of those years, you're raising a daughter with cerebral palsy. And people might hear that, oh, Charlotte has cerebral palsy. She has needs that are complex and she's in a wheelchair. But I don't think they see or understand the behind the scenes, which means there's lifting, there's carrying, there's physio, there's all these things, hospital visits, health scares, all of these things along the way. I'm going to ask, do you help feed Charlotte? Does Charlotte feed or does she tube feed?
No, Charlotte, that's a very poignant question, appropriate question, because that was a battle we had with doctors. They said, your life and her life's going to be so much easier if you just feed her with a G tube. Yeah. So a tube that goes right into her belly.
Right.
And we said, this child enjoys the experience of eating. So no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And that was 15 years ago.
That's amazing.
And she loves. She can only drink thickened things. So like smoothies. Yeah. She doesn't eat the way we eat. She can't eat the foods we eat, which is another complication altogether. Right.
Yeah.
I wish we had a chef, but yeah, so we're all kind of the A team. Yeah. My wife, myself, we have nannies involved, and we have to be willing to, drop everything and get in the game.
Yeah.
So that preparedness to just pivot on a dime is a learned skill, an acquired skill. And the other thing is, and again, I think this is appropriate for all of us, for all dads, compartmentalization is one of the best skills you can possibly learn, whether it's you have a sick child or a, a parent who's struggling and aging, or you just had a fight with your wife. You need to be able to keep those things separate, keep the rest of your life at work, completely set aside from those kinds of challenges in your life, because you wouldn't want it to infect the rest of your life. And that's an acquired skill as well. But it's something I'm very grateful for. I remember specifically, when I was working for one of the very large finance firms in the US, and we had a pitch. It was nighttime and we were pitching for a large piece of business. My colleague and I are sitting in the car looking up at the meeting room. The lights are on in this one conference room and we're next. It was like 7 o'clock at night. And I got a phone call saying Charlotte's on the way to the ER in an ambulance. And so I go through the details with my wife and I hang up, and my colleague says, Curtis, I'm going to tell him we're going to postpone. I said, nope, we're going to go in there and do our thing. And I'll pick this up again in an hour. You just have to be able to do it. And it turned out I was so focused. It was a great presentation, but you have to be able to do that. And that's something that, I've learned to do over the years.
Okay, let's dive into that, because I think that's really a powerful thing. It is an acquired skill. I think many of us struggle with it, with keeping things separate, but also managing that we have to be conscious of everything that's going on at once. We wear a lot, we hold a lot on our shoulders. As you acquired this skill, what are some of the things that helped you? Guys listening to this, they may not have a daughter who has cerebral palsy, but they have kids, and things come up, and there's illnesses and sicknesses or sports or trips or family members or parents who are ill. These things come up. What were some of the things that helped you acquire this skill, so that you could separate them and yet still care?
I think a couple things. Number one, when you have a lot of those struggles, and as you pointed out, there's so many, it's almost countless how many things can come up.
Yeah.
You add just kid calls you in the middle of the day saying, I don't feel well at school. Can you come pick me up?
Yeah.
And I work from home now, but still my days are full of meetings, right?
Yeah.
And it's so important to just be able to, rather than get upset and angry and take it out, unfortunately, on the child who's not feeling well. Yeah. I'm the adult in this situation. What do I need to do? I need to be a problem solver, right? Getting upset isn't going to help anyone. Throwing things isn't going to help anyone. There's probably a little bit of that in the early years.
Yeah.
Before I got over it.
Yeah, sure.
But I think what helps is success in those crises. So you face a crisis, and it can be anything. As you said, God forbid, I hope dads listening do not have children with significant disabilities, right? But that doesn't mean there aren't significant challenges that come up all the time. And when they do come up, we just want to take a deep breath. You're probably a great coach for this, Cam. Just take a deep breath. Just use that adult brain and that adult perseverance and resilience that we have trained ourselves to have, and go calmly into the situation and solve things. And dads are solvers, right? So much, to the chagrin of our spouses, we're always trying to solve things, right? Yeah. But in many crises, it helps just to be calm and thoughtful. And then when you get back to the work life or the other things you were doing, you actually appreciate that break, so that you're able to, okay, I've been through that. I'm back. Everything's still fine at work. I didn't get fired. My colleagues and bosses actually respect the heck out of me for it. Like, you're still standing. Yeah. Right. So it's an opportunity to grow. And then you say, yeah, I can do this. Next time it comes up, you're a little bit stronger. If it comes up every few weeks, you get really strong.
I love that you say you're a little bit stronger. There is something empowering and something just reassuring about being able to navigate complexity like that. And you said dads are the solvers, and I think we are, and I think we're called to be the solvers, the leaders in the home. We set the temperature in the home, and when things go wrong, people look to mom. Mom's usually the nurturer. Dads can nurture as well, but they look to dad as like the temperature. How are we going to navigate this? And as a guy, I know I've struggled with this at times too, but over time you acquire the skill to say, no, we're going to handle this. We're going to handle this like the adult. I'm going to be the adult in the room. Doesn't mean that half an hour from now, I'm going to jump in my vehicle by myself and just go, but like I'm going to be the adult in the room and figure this out. And it empowers you and it makes you a stronger father, a stronger leader, and it impacts your work as well. And I thank you for saying that, because it's too often people don't see that it interacts. They think putting it in two compartments means it's separate, but it's not separate. It always influences. And again, another thing that I'm sure you've learned in your life from your personal life that translates into your coaching.
And that's absolutely the case. But what jumps to mind when you were just going through that is the other responsibility that we have as dads, as parents, is that everything we do is modeling for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
They notice everything. So if there's a mini crisis situation, and we just had one this week, how we respond teaches our kids how they will respond. So if we're angry and short and barking, right, because we're really stressed out, we're training our children, oh, that's how you react to a crisis.
Yeah.
And being aware of that, as you said, being the grown-up, being the adult in the room, and recognizing all eyes are on me right now. I'm going to be calm in this situation. I'm going to handle it smoothly. And I'm teaching my 15-year-old, this is how we do it.
I was just about to say that I think it's no coincidence, no accident that Claire is well put together, thoughtful, and well spoken.
But for the benefit of the dads out there, I can't be that way all the time.
Yeah.
I fall down too, right? Sometimes the stress is too much. But what's important is I catch myself. I'm aware of it. And Cam, you and I could talk for about 4 hours on the lessons. But one of the most important lessons is if I find myself in a situation, Charlotte has a seizure, it happened recently, and it's very stressful in the home. We don't have time for Claire. The first thing I do when things calm down is I go right to Claire. I say, you know what, I'm sorry that we weren't there for you in that moment. I'm sorry that it was so stressful and I contributed to that stress. That's not the person I want to be. And that's not the way I want you to feel. And that's the other thing. Kids observe everything, but man, do they appreciate when parents show them the respect of an apology. Mm. It's very powerful.
And for many of us, it takes a lot. But when you get down eye to eye, and you apologize because something you've done, you can see it in your kid's face. You can see it in their body language. They're like, what's happening right now? I've apologized to my kids often. Because we do make mistakes. We're not perfect. We mess things up. And as long as we apologize and say, this is what I would do in my home is I apologize. This is how I was feeling. This is what I probably could have done better, but I apologize for the way that I respond. And so they can see that I'm working through it on my own in this growth process as well.
And that's what they learn as well. Not just, wow, dad's growing, but that's how we deal with people. We apologize to people if we're not at our best selves, and we're always trying to improve. Again, these lessons, the kids will pick them all up.
Yeah, it's amazing. So your journey's impacted your life as a professional, as a parent, as a coach. Over that journey, I want to talk about your professional life for a moment. Like 30 years as a client-facing executive in you worked with some big firms. What was the deciding factor for you to say, no, this season is over. It's a season of change, which for many of the guys listening, they might be on the brink of this and it's a hard decision to make. So 30 years, you're like, no, I think this is it. I'm going to do this because I have a passion for mentoring and working with youth and 20 somethings. What was that deciding factor that made that happen?
Well, I think, there are a lot of things that went into it. I think I just reached a stage in my career where I was asking myself the question, how do I feel about the job or the way that I'm giving back every day? And it became very clear over the years that the most rewarding part of my work week was the mentoring at work. So I worked at JP Morgan for a number of years. And there's one floor where all the salespeople reside.
Hmm.
And I became known as the guy that you have coffee with on the sales floor if you're under 40. Just because, not just because Curtis knows everything, he absolutely doesn't. And he's not the most senior guy in the firm, far from it. But he's always listening literally to you.
Hmm.
And when we talk, it's not about patting myself on the back and telling you how amazing my career has been, which is a waste of your time.
Yeah.
It's about telling you where you are, what you're thinking about, where you want to be. How can I help?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a tattoo because my wife and I have the same mantra. It's how can I help in any situation? And that really works in coaching and it really works in parenting.
Mm-hmm. When you said the word listening, because Curtis is going to listen to you, I immediately drew an arrow into asking the right questions. Like people came to you in that environment, not because they just wanted the answer from you. It's because as a leader and as a mentor, you probably asked the right questions that got out of people this process of like they're thinking on their own, they create some individuality throughout their process. And they're like, oh, that felt really good. I'm gonna go back and have another conversation. But I have mentors in my life that done that for me. So I can just see when you said, because that's where I'm gonna listen, you must be have a gift or have worked on asking the right questions.
And I appreciate that. Yes. And a lot of practice. I've been doing this mentoring for more than 30 years.
Yeah.
But it's also, I'm surprisingly informal,
Hmm.
which is another word for approachable.
Yeah.
So young people like, oh, he's a managing director. And then they meet me and I said, this is a safe space.
Yeah.
You can say or ask literally anything and it won't leave this room. And you can see the relief on their faces like, wow, this is a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's how I work with my mentees as well. It's, look, your parents are giving you fantastic advice, but I'm not your parents,
Yeah.
right? I'm here to serve you and I'm here to help you get that job. So I'm not just going to be a cheerleader and I'm going to take the risk to tell you things that might be a little bit challenging, but I know for a fact are going to help you get there.
Hmm.
And in order to do that, I have to establish that trust and I have to be super compassionate. And I always tell them, this comes out of my mouth at least 10 times every coaching session. This is not a judgment. I am here for you. I'm your friend. This is only to help you.
Hmm.
And it really does help.
Yeah. There's value in having those hard conversations. And I say hard, maybe it's the wrong word. I don't like that word now that I've said it. Susan Scott in her book, Fierce Conversation, we call them fierce conversations, like
Yeah.
purposeful, robust, meaningful conversations. And it's okay to bring sometimes like, this is what you need to hear. I'm not your parents. I'm not going to butter this up for you.
Right.
It's not going to help you if I do that. So I'm here to
And the
help you grow.
typical answer is, wow, Curtis, no one's ever dared to tell me that before.
Yeah.
I said, no, because there's nothing in it for them. It's very easy for them to say, your resume looks awesome. Or, yeah, that was a great interview. And I'm saying, I'm working for you. So I'm going to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Right. And we're going to work together to get you where you want to go.
Okay. We're flopping back and forth, but I think this is something that's
I
going
like
in my
it.
brain. So I have to ask.
I'm on the subway.
That's perfect. You mentioned creating safe spaces, which led to building trust and showing compassion, and you have these meaningful conversations. Dads are listening to this. They might be in a leadership position. They might not be, but they have colleagues. They have kids at home. They have a wife at home. And it sounds like the skills that you've developed and you've practiced and you're helping others with is something that a lot of us on our own should be working through. So what are some ways, not how, what are some ways in which we can create safe spaces to hold conversations and ask good questions?
Yeah, I like that question. I think if we slow down a little bit and rather than think, and I struggle with this as much as any dad, but rather than think about the 50 different things that are happening with the family and the household, with work and the dog and the kids and the school and someone's bullying, all these things, they just pile up. Stepping back and remembering that our children, these little humans, love us, look up to us, They look to us for guidance, even when they're talking back. And remembering, first and foremost, we love them more than we can possibly say.
Mm.
So everything that comes out of our mouths with them, and I mentioned this is something I need to practice too, everything that comes out of our mouths should have that in mind. And knowing not just the way we treat them because we want them to behave a certain way, but the way we treat them ends up being the way they treat others.
Mm.
So every single day at the dinner table, you ask the question, how do we generate these opportunities to learn and grow? Every dinner time conversation is one of those opportunities. I'm going to mention a wonderful book that I didn't write by a woman named Jennifer Wallace called Never Enough.
Mm.
It's about the toxic culture in high achieving families pushing their kids, right? And it's really becoming an issue these days. But it's a wonderful book. She's just an inspirational teacher on the subject of how to think about our kids differently and not push them so hard. But I think, again, those, instead of when the kids come home from school, and this is something she just wrote, instead of saying, how was your day or how was that test? Which, you know, puts them in a spot of having to think about a challenge, and it creates, it's not necessarily that loving engagement. It's more like 20 questions.
Yeah.
So she says, instead, ask them how their lunch was,
Yeah.
which has nothing to do with that, you know, challenging thing and mom and dad checking up on them. Right. And that's, I think of the dinner time conversation the same way, just talking about your day, modeling that, asking lots of questions, not how'd you do on the test? You know, asking questions, oh, what did it feel like when this happened? Right. And this happened to me today, and this is how it felt to me. Right. This is kind of touchy feely, but it's also what our kids need.
Yeah.
Right. And then they see that engagement. You know, my wife had a very challenging day. She works in a hospital. She had a very challenging day. Let's talk to mom about her challenging day. Let's see what we can do to make it easier for her tonight. Again, there's two really important reasons to do that. Number one is because that's what a compassionate human being does. But number two, your kids are going to behave that way in the future. They are learning how to be grown-ups from you. So I try to, the word try is really important there. I try to remember that whenever I'm engaging with my family.
This is so good, guys. If you're listening to this and you're not writing stuff down like I am right now, you need to go back and write this down. Curtis, you said some pretty powerful things. We can keep digging in, but a lot of what we've talked about is like some ideas, some suggestions, some guides, some tips for the guys listening to this. And I want to thank you for that. But I'm curious because we're all on our own journey. For you yourself, as a dad, as a husband right now, what's one area that you're diving into, an area of growth or learning that you're excited about?
Yeah, I think I'm always excited about, you know, better every day, right?
Mm.
I just want to be 1% better every day. And one area of growth for me is with my 15-year-old who's going through high school and all the challenges that come with that. And she's 15, right?
Yeah.
It's a challenging time for girls, much more for girls than boys. And she can be very short with us. She can be rude, right? Like all of us can be, but teenagers in particular. And what I'm trying to learn is not to react.
Mm.
And I'm historically a pretty thoughtful, patient person.
Yeah.
And I have a daughter who can't speak and doesn't walk. I'm very patient with her. And I have to remember to have exactly the same patience with my 15-year-old and not to expect her to act like an adult, because her brain development is still 8 or 9 years away from completion. And it's really important to remember that prefrontal cortex is not done until she's 24, 25 years old. So I have to remember, Kurt, she's a teenager. Cut her some slack. So that's what I'm working on right now, not reacting, but saying, wow, Claire, you probably could have said that a little bit nicer, right? Or,
Yeah.
or how do you think that sounded to me? Do you think
Mm.
that sounded kind? And she'll think about it and say, no. I say, okay, maybe we'll try a little bit harder next time. That's the dad I want to be. So that's what I'm working on right now.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And
My
it,
pleasure.
yeah, it just shows like your commitment to personal growth, which I think is amazing, but also how real life is with navigating teenagers.
That's right. Like I said,
I,
we prayed a little too hard. We got a ton
yeah,
of independence there.
yeah. And I've got a 12-year-old turning 13-year-old daughter right now, and you're just giving me some insight into what maybe to expect. Because she's also quite independent and opinionated all of a sudden. So no,
Right.
thank you. Curtis, I very much appreciated this conversation. Man, there's so much in this that guys will take away and can implement and start making a change in their family right now. If someone's listening to this and they want to learn more about you, they want to connect with you. I know you've got a book that's coming out that you're working on. Where can they find out more about that?
Sure. So the book, I'm not sure about the timing, but I can easily be found on LinkedIn, just Curtis Butler. And as I mentioned, the name of my company is Guided Ascent Career Coaching, because I think of the job search, particularly for young people, kind of like an Everest expedition.
Hmm.
So I'm your guide. You can try it on your own, but the weather's going to change. You might fall into a crevasse. It's good to have an experienced guide with you. And you can check us out on the web at jobreadygrads.com.
Amazing. Curtis, thank you so much for taking time away from your family to spend with me today and have this conversation. And I wish you and Charlotte and Claire and your wife a fantastic fall.
Thank you very much. It's really been a pleasure.